What is up, everybody? I am Dr. Ray Gorman, physical therapist and owner of Engage Movement, a company that helps clinicians like you start their own business and use a model that is not reliant on trading time for money. And I am joined with our client, Alexis Wolf, Alex, as I know you by, from Refined Physical Therapy in Missouri, but I can't remember where in Missouri. Where are you at in Missouri again?
Springfield, Missouri.
In Springfield, Missouri.
Hmm.
Alex has been an amazing client to work with, and I'm excited to hear a little bit about your story and share it with our audience. Why don't you fill them in a little bit on kind of your background and what led us here today?
Yeah, so I feel like I've had a couple backgrounds, but primarily in the hospital outpatient setting. That's kind of where I had my startup, whether that was athletic training and physical therapy. So I started out practicing through that. Um, and it was actually about the time that I had my son and I was still working full time that I was like, this is just not where I want to be
Yeah.
anymore. And I knew I wanted to open my own practice, but I had no clue what that really looked like until I started coaching a little bit more. I'm also weightlifting coach certified. So I was like, just getting back in the gym, working with those people is like, okay, this is something here. This is kind of the direction I want to go. And so I had been, of course, on social media, looking around,
Mm-hmm.
found Ray, was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I am looking for that flexibility. I can still coach, I can still do physical therapy, both things that I love, but I want the freedom to be a mom.
Yeah.
And so that's where that really came into play.
And you kind of have a similar background to what I had when I started out my cash practice. It was like I had this coaching experience. I knew that I wanted to kind of be in the gym setting. I knew that I wanted to kind of blend those two experiences. Now, for you, when we started talking and working together, I mean, you really were blank slate. You had nothing
Mhm.
established. Like, talk a little bit about that as you kind of got started and maybe what drove you to seek out a coach to start that process rather
Mhm.
than like doing it on your own.
Yeah, so I would say I had blank slate in terms of the actual like clinic side
Yeah.
where my husband owns the gym. I had a
Yeah.
perfect space. I didn't
Yeah,
have
you
to
had
worry
the
about,
operating location.
yeah, no extra overhead or anything like that. So it was like, okay, where do I even start with opening up my own cash-based practice? I knew I'd never want to deal with insurance ever again. That was not that was not an option. So I'm like, I don't even know how to price. I don't know what to do, XYZ to get, sales processes going. I was like, what does the back end look like? I know my end goal is this certain type of flexibility. I can do in person and remote, but I had nowhere to go from there. So it was like, as long as we got to talking, then we kind of followed up through those processes. And then that's how we got started.
You've been a really fast adopter of our model, what we call the performance provider growth model. For those of you listening, it's kind of a service model that combines, asynchronous or excuse me, synchronous in-person care with a virtual offer, what we call a prescriptive exercise program that is an asynchronous offer that we're delivering to clients. You've been a really quick adopter of that. And I know we had this conversation
Mm-hmm.
before. What were some of the reasons why you thought like that model was for you and some of the reasons why you feel like maybe you were such an early adopter, a quick implementer to that model?
I would say because my goal was flexibility. That's
Yeah.
what the asynchronous option was going to give me. And I was already really confident in programming. I mean, that's basically an asynchronous thing. It doesn't have
Yep.
to be one on one. You're already programming out and then you just adjust from there. So that already just felt very natural. So I could just combine the natural flow of that with my in person, but not have to be in the gym from 8 to 5 every day. I kind of just get to make my own schedule, pick what I want to do when. I'm still programming, still coaching, those kinds of things, but I get to pick what my schedule actually looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, we see that a lot where it's that drive for flexibility, but there's still
Mm-hmm.
like this like sticky point of implementation. And I think the more that you want something, the harder you work for it, and the more that
Mm-hmm.
you figure out, and the more natural it just kind of falls into your lap. I think for anyone out there who has a coaching background, who is a physical therapist, like I always say that is an accelerant to becoming a great
Mhm.
provider. That is an accelerant to being really comfortable with these newer models that are coming out that allow for a little bit more flexibility, that allow for a little more freedom. And especially if you're that type of person where you're like walking into a traditional clinic every day, seeing those same four walls and saying like,
Mhm.
is this it? Like, I want y'all to know that like there is a model out there for you. It just doesn't exist in the traditional realm.
Mhm.
Um, what were some of the challenges, maybe both like logistical roadblocks, mental roadblocks, that you experienced along the way in establishing your business and building your clientele? Like, talk a little
Mhm.
bit about that.
I would say a lot of it were mental roadblocks, and we had talked about this a lot. So it was just getting myself to do, not that I'm stubborn enough, I'm going to go do it, but it was just
Mm.
actually getting into the other gyms outside of my own.
Yeah,
So, and I'm a comfort person. I like being in my own gym. Obviously, we have plenty of clients here, but actually going out to other gyms, just networking is a huge game changer. And now it's like one of my favorite things to do. I love going to gyms, talking with people, dropping in the class, whatever it may be. It's one of my favorite things. So, super beneficial just getting over that mental roadblock of doing that. And then I would say it's just a lot of the back end stuff, just like flow of the business, just takes some learning. Um, and you guys just accelerated that process.
appreciate that.
Perfect. So,
I I appreciate that. I feel like the two biggest misconceptions in for people out there who are thinking of starting their own business. Number one is like this thought that if you build it, they will come. Like
mhm,
that's just not the reality. Like people will
yeah.
come when you work for it, right? When you
Mhm,
go out there and you prove yourself and you get results and you put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And in a lot of ways, like we aren't just teaching you business skills, we are helping you grow as a person, right? We are helping this personal development side of like, hey, I understand why you are uncomfortable going into different gyms
mm,
and putting yourself out there, but part of building the business is building your reputation. And I think you've done an amazing job of putting yourself out
mhm,
there and creating some really solid networks.
yeah.
I think the other thing is we only know models that we have been exposed to, right? So like when you think about how a traditional physical therapy clinic is built, the pipeline is, clients go to their doctor, the doctor says go to physical therapy, and therefore you now have physical therapy clients. What we need to do is we really need to reframe your mindset around how you get clients, that they're probably not going to come from doctor referrals as frequent. And I think that that's just a big, big piece for people that are watching this. Like, don't think of this as a traditional pipeline. Think of this as something different. Your consumer's different, the model's different. What can you kind of lend to that? Anything that stands out there?
So, and a lot of it is even word of mouth. I've noticed, like, obviously, I've got some social media, but getting out and just networking with people. And then it's like, okay, I got a coach, I got a client from there. Well, then that's how I'm getting my next one and the next one from there. So it's just, it's a very different type of pipeline. It's very much, I see it more similar to like the personal training side, kind of at the gym here.
Yeah,
But this is, very specific service based. So people are actually seeking this. They just didn't know it until somebody told them about it. I see a lot of that coming through the door because where I'm at is actually not a huge physical therapy based place.
sure.
So just a lot of education to people. They're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. So a lot of awareness as
Yeah.
well.
You bring up a good point. It's like we're almost filtering into the consumer that is really looking to solve a specific problem for themselves.
Mhm,
Right? I think that the people who fall into the personal training realm, they're like, I have this problem, I need a professional to solve it.
mhm,
I feel like the people who seek out cash-based physical therapy are very similar. They're like, I have this problem. The
mm,
traditional model doesn't quite help me solve it. Again, this isn't to downplay traditional physical therapy.
right.
I say this all the time. It is a really good model for the consumer that it is built for. But when we get into kind of this performance population, it leaves this massive gap of even just like how clinics are outfitted with equipment. And so there's this gap of like they're done with therapy, but they haven't actually done the things that they need to do to get back to the activities that they love. And I think you've outlined that kind of perfectly. What what is you've made pretty big change over the time that we've worked together. I mean, you went from, this being a side thing to transitioning from full time to part time to
Mhm.
now you are completely out of that clinic and on your own. And you've done that in a relatively fast period of
Fast.
time. So nice job there. What is kind of your life like now, both like personally and professionally? Like, what's it like now that you have this business set up and kind of operating well?
I would even see, so like professionally, I feel like I have this like great confidence that I can turn just about any situation into a business opportunity. Not that you want
Wow.
to always think that way, but it's just even just going out and meeting with people, it's not like, hey, I'm a physical therapist, come see me. It's just like, oh, people just get to talking and then you just kind of draw that out of them a little bit more. And it's like, well, actually,
Yeah.
so you kind of just create opportunities that way. Personally, and I say this a lot. So my husband and I have been married for 7 years, and this is the most we've seen each other
Wow.
in that time frame. And
That's
so it's
huge.
been a huge just family dynamic change. Our son comes to work with us every day now.
Yeah.
And so I love having my close knit family together and it works really well for us.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I know that that drive for flexibility for you was huge and important. I know that your family aspect was a big pull for that. Was a lot of that just kind of bogged down by the 40 plus hour clinical grind and your husband's schedule and your schedule? Like, why was that even happening in the first place?
Yeah. So my husband works, about 60 hours a week between personal training and he's a pastor of a church. Like, I mean, we'd see each other maybe 30 minutes to an hour at night before it's like, hey, we actually need to go to bed because we got to be up at 5 the next morning. So that's been a huge change there because when I was full time, obviously I'm still doing all my regular, mom caretaking duties because
Mm-hmm.
my husband works a lot of extra hours. And so I was like, I can't sustain this because I want to be a mom and I want to be a PT, but this
Yeah.
model was just not fitting where I wanted to be.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. What is something that you found either, to be relatively unique or extremely valuable for you in the process of working together? What's kind of stood out to you?
I love the one-on-one. So obviously in your first several weeks of training, you've got the like kind of group calls. I actually really like those. I love group settings. You can just kind of bounce ideas off each other. And then following up with these one-on-one calls, just kind of hone into your own practice has been very beneficial. I feel like that's very unique uh, compared to other models that I've seen.
It's funny. It's like if we're gonna tell you how valuable one-on-one is for your physical therapy clients, but then only coach you in a group setting, it wouldn't really
Right.
make a lot of sense, right? Because there are just different levels of conversations that we can have one-on-one, even if we can solve the same problem in a group setting. It's just a more comfortable experience. We're able to dedicate the entire hour to your business, your problems, and that's something that I recognize is going to be a scale limiter for our business, but it's just really a non-negotiable of something that we're not willing to get rid of. Um, what is one piece of advice that you would give to somebody out there who is thinking about starting this process, thinking about starting their own business, who's maybe a little scared, who's maybe a little hesitant, who maybe thinks it's a risky move, right? Like what is something that you would tell them?
You kind of said it right there. I mean, take the risk. I think the risk is nothing compared to the reward that I've had,
Yeah.
even in my first, 6 months
Yeah.
of doing this. So, and I mean, if you're going to go for it, go for it. I don't really think there's a holding back that you can do. And that was one of my mental blocks. Like, why am I still part time right now when I can do so much more in my business? So, like, let's just get rid of it and moving forward just fine.
It's funny how that starts to change a little bit, right? Where things that seemed risky at one point, like now no longer seem risky, right?
Hmm.
Like everybody I think is so scared to leave their job because of the financial risk that comes with that. And I say this a lot, but there becomes a point where you look at your job and you say, okay, this is the financial risk is actually going there and spending 20 hours a week there.
Hmm.
Like financial risk, time risk, opportunity
Hmm.
cost. And that's something that you can't experience until you really take that plunge, take that leap, and trust that the net is there.
Hmm.
Um, any final thoughts that you want to leave us with, Alex?
Oh gosh. And we talked to this probably the first time we had met, and you're like, well, why are you even looking for a coach? I'm like, because I don't want to go backwards. I'm like, I'm looking to move forward, and that was just what I needed to keep me moving forward.
Yeah,
I love the support. It's just been a huge game changer building this business. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I can't wait to see
good.
where I keep going.
Same. We're just getting started.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your trust. Thank you for believing in yourself too that you can do this. I think that's a huge part. And for anyone out there who is looking to make the leap, who is hearing Alex's story and thinking like, "Hey, that's exactly me. I don't want my life to look like that. I want to start having more flexibility. I want to start having more freedom." We'll make sure that there's a link below. You can head over to engagemovement.com or you can follow me on Instagram at Ray Gorman DPT and you can send me a message there and we can start the conversation of what it would look like for you to start your own business that blends both in person and virtual offers. Alex, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think
Thank you.
everybody out there is going to appreciate it.